Hello, everybody. This is Heather Alderman. I'm the Executive Director of COSMA, and today's training is going to be about preparing to be a site reviewer and going on site visits for COSMA accreditation. So to start off, I'm going to start with the big picture where you become acquainted with or definitely begin to internalize the philosophy that we have around our accreditation process. It is an outcomes-based accreditation process that is mission-driven. So you are comparing the program to their own mission. You're not comparing it to a different or differently located other program. We focus on the process as developmental. So when a program is at the point where you are going to conduct a site visit there, they have spent quite a bit of time learning about the process. They have gotten feedback from the Board of Commissioners. They've worked on their outcomes assessment plan and learned more about the accreditation process. So they are also starting to embrace this philosophy. And we also, of course, are all about continuous improvement. So there are different ways you can interpret that within your report when you're looking at the different principles when you're on site. And one of them, of course, is outcomes assessment. But in other areas too, we want to see, it's a self-assessment that they've written that you're reviewing. And so we want to know what about that self-assessment, what areas are there that the program could work on and could improve with. And of course, we're also very flexible accreditation process, so we're not requiring certain classes or certain qualifications or number of faculty or having anything specific in terms of, say, connections to business, sport business and industry. That said, of course, the principles outline best practices, and that's what the programs are working toward. So what you would begin to do initially is, and we have already vetted this within the process, but we also want you to make sure that the program that you're visiting has been forthcoming with the sport management degrees that you are there to review. So we call this the scope of accreditation. So we just want you to make sure that you know what you're looking for, and if there's anything that's a surprise, we would like to know before the site visit. Later in this discussion, I'm going to talk about some of these other elements here, such as what accreditation decisions the Board of Commissioners is able to make. And we want you to know exactly what happened with this program before they got to this point, so you understand what candidacy status is. And for a program that is going through first-time accreditation, that might be a slightly different look than somebody that's going through reaffirmation of accreditation, where they've been accredited for 7 years and they have reported outcomes assessment results for 7 years annually. And so they have there's a different bar for them. The time commitment that this takes is definitely preliminary review of the self-study. Plus, you will be on site for 2 days at the visited program, and you fly in generally the evening before, and then you leave on the second day so that you can get home. You also then are writing a report within 2 weeks of that visit with your partner. And so there is quite a bit of time commitment and responsibility. The other side of that is that you do get an honorarium for doing this, and I'll talk about that more later. As we came through the pandemic and have embraced more virtual communication methods, I'm able to actually come in and sit on some of the interview sessions. So sometimes I'm an observer. If there's anybody geographically nearby, they may be able to be there to help you. But myself, and if there's a commissioner, say, that comes into a meeting, we are there to support you, the team, not to be conducting interviews ourselves with the program that you're doing. And also, there are 2 different levels of the individuals who are going on the visits. One is the team chair, who would have more responsibility, but also more experience in these site visits. So they've been on more than one, probably two or more site visits as the team member. And so if you're new to this process and you want to go on a visit, then you would be that team member who is there, of course, to do a lot of interviewing and writing the report, but you can use that team chair as a mentor to help you. So that's a little bit about the organization of the site visits. Something that's very important to this organization is that we ensure that the team members have no conflict of interest with the program that they are going to review. And so we go through it on both ends. When I'm looking for a site reviewer, and if you are trained and on my list, then of course, I will ask you, do not respond to this site visit if you feel that you have any conflict of interest with somebody at the program. And then once volunteers come forward to be a team, I then go to the program and say, these are the two individuals we're considering for your site visit. Does anybody there have a conflict of interest with them? So you can see in this list some of the things that would eliminate you from going to a program. It's really based on any personal or professional relationship that you currently have. We certainly have sometimes questionable areas like, oh, I once met them at a conference, or we worked on a paper in grad school together. That, depending on how long grad school was before, or what happened, that is a situation that we will take on a case-by-case basis and try to understand whether there is any sort of conflict of interest. All right. To prepare for the site visit, I'm going to go through the principles and what you're looking for, but there's a lot of other elements to the site visit that aren't related to the actual content of our accreditation manuals. So you will be, taking some sort of transportation to the location. Probably you're flying. Some people can take trains or certainly rent cars or drive. You will be staying in a hotel that is as close as we can get to the campus as possible to make it easier. You will be, of course, having some meals on the campus with maybe during interviews or with stakeholders, but you also will be having meals separately with your team member. One thing is we do not require you to have sort of social evening dinners with the program because it may be a time when you need to decompress. It may be a time when you actually spend working and writing a little bit of the report. But that's a part of the process. With your team member, of course, you're dividing the responsibilities of the writing of the report, also of the interviewing of the different stakeholders. So that is to be determined in advance. We also want you to think about what you say in front of stakeholders or with the program you're visiting, and then what you might discuss with your team member or with me in a more private setting. So this is really kind of a diplomatic mission, and it is one that you might be there to help the program understand more thoroughly what it needs or wants from this process, and you might be able to communicate that between different stakeholders for the program. So it's very much you may have a question about something you think is maybe out of compliance, but there are many ways to ask questions that enable the program to tell you what they do and how they do it, so that you are open to the response, and you're also giving them an idea that this is an important area that they should consider. So we talk about that a lot, not only here in this training, but always also before the site visit. I do meet with each team and we talk about these kinds of things. The report is a summary of each of the 7 principles, and I'll go through this more later, but we have a template for it. We have a sample that you can look at if you're not sure what to do or how to write it. And then I always edit the reports as well. And in addition, you always have a contact at the program. We call that person the campus coordinator. It's often the person who wrote the self-study or who is the COSMA representative. But you may have an administrative individual that you are talking to discuss logistics, or you may just be talking to this faculty person. So how do you know where to go, who you're talking to? Well, each program is going to give you a site visit schedule. It is based on a sample that we have, which is intended to indicate who the stakeholders are, but also approximately about how much time should be spent with those stakeholders. And then while it is very flexible, they also might be able to, we have only a few things that are kind of set to happen at specific times. One would be an exit interview would of course happen toward the end of the site visit, because that is a summary review of what happened during the site visit. But sometimes that actually happens before some interviews happen. So we just have to be flexible. And normally the site visit schedule is set based on when the top administrators are available for their interviews. So that's often the president, provost, vice president of academic affairs, et cetera. Those usually happen earlier in the visit and are that's the kind of cornerstone around which all the other interviews are created. You do talk to students, and we want to get a cross section not only of the different, say, degree programs, if there are different types, but also students at different points within those programs. So maybe somebody who is a sophomore and then someone who's a senior, et cetera. And then demographically, we want to get a cross section of those students as well. So when you look at the site visit schedule, you are asking yourself these questions and making sure that it's represented in the schedule. Another one, of course, is as you're reading the self-study, you are getting an understanding of who all the stakeholders are. And so you would want to see interviews and time slots for all of those different types of individuals. And, one option might be that if there's an advisory board or alumni group, you might be able to talk to some of those individuals. And of course, you can do that now virtually, and those individuals do not have to physically come to the campus to talk to you. So that can really not only widen who you speak with, but make it more accessible for everybody. So I highly recommend, of course, that with yourself and your team chair or the other team member, that you have a sense of what you want to talk about with each of the stakeholders. And you will, of course, be repeating questions across stakeholders, and that you divide these responsibilities evenly or according to either maybe some principles you're focusing on or whatever. Often a team will have one person who is the sort of question asker and follow-up question asker, and then the other person is maybe taking notes or just listening very attentively so that you can write your notes and write your report. And then the exit interview is a time when you are summarizing your findings with the site visit, with the program that you're visiting. And usually it's only a faculty member or two in the room. There aren't generally any administrators in that interview. And you're praising your first and indicating to the program what they're doing well. And you do this for each of the principals. And then you might talk about any recommendations you have. So things that aren't out of compliance, but that might be great new things for them to try, or connections to make, or adjustments to make to their program in one way or another. And then you would also bring up any areas of what you might think are not compliant, and let them know what is going to be in the report. So the point of this is to be transparent and to help prepare the site for what might be coming in that report. So we don't have any gotcha moments or surprises in the report. All right, so the first task, of course, for this job is to review the self-study document. And you can go to the website, of course, and poke around at the program. Part of this you'll be doing because you're just making sure that all of the degree programs are included. But I want you to read the self-study document. So what that entails is reading the self-study guideline questions and then the responses to them. Now, I always read these, and if I find anything missing or that's confusing, I do work with the program to fill in those gaps. Whether they have done that or the degree to which they've done that, that will be up to you then to make note of course. But you can take notes, you can highlight things, you can, whatever system seems to work for you, you can use. Of course, if you've never done it, you don't necessarily know what your system is. But when you read a question, you may see multiple parts to it, or you may wonder where it's coming from. You can always, of course, in the principles document, go back to what the principle says and any sort of description that it has, so that you can really get a full sense of what the whole point of that principle is, so that you know how to evaluate each of those self-study guideline responses. So you will be, of course, working closely with your team member. And then, as I've alluded to, I have a fairly lengthy conversation with all teams before they go out, where we, about 6 weeks before the visit, we go through each of the principles. We talk about what you're seeing in them. And it's a chance for us to, it is a training in and of itself about this program, interpreting their responses. And then what comes from that is that you can develop some questions to ask the program. And I will send those questions to the program. So another sort of aspect of this transparency is to ensure that the program knows what's coming before you get there. And certainly your areas of inquiry may not have anything to do, but it doesn't mean that the areas are out of compliance. It just may be, ooh, tell us more about this event that you plan with your students, or can you describe what's going on with your curriculum changes? Or you have lost a faculty member, what does that make your load, your teaching load and other responsibility load look like? So anyway, it's not a secret. This is all very transparent, and we want that to be the case for both you and for the program. Okay, I'm going to go through each of the 7 principles because this is the heart of your job, although there are, of course, these other aspects to it that I've started to talk about a little bit. But the cornerstone of this accreditation process is outcomes assessment. And there are... and
Can I ask a quick?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I should probably know this, but just for clarification, it's a 2-person review team. One person's the lead and one person's the team member, or is it 2 team members plus the lead?
No, it's just 2 team members. One person's
Okay.
the lead and the other person is, that has a slightly different title. Yeah.
Sure, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And that would be different if there is a very complex program or a program with multiple sites geographically, which really has very rarely happened, and I think is less common than it used to be. I think instead of having other sites for university locations, people do online learning at this point. So
Sure. Okay.
yeah, so I think maybe internationally we might add a team member depending on what's going on there. But yeah, 2 people.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So back to principle 1 here. So these are the areas that you are covering when you're reviewing the outcomes assessment plan. So as you know, it's gone through candidacy status already. It could be that this program has been collecting data for many years because they already had developed some sort of outcomes assessment before they started this process. But you're ensuring, of course, that the program has indicated what their mission is, but really that is the comparison point that you're making when you look at the student learning outcomes that they've written and all of the other aspects of their program. So if they say they do or do not do something, you would look back to the mission to say, yeah, that's in line with the mission, or actually that is not in line with the mission. And that would help you evaluate different areas. All of the outcomes assessment plan elements, like the student learning outcomes themselves, the measurement tools that they're using or the rubrics they're using to measure those student learning outcomes, are there for you to review again. The operational effectiveness goals, which are the program level strategic type of goals, those are there as well, for you to examine and to look at within the context of the whole program. You also have a couple of other sections of the outcomes assessment plan, including basic skills development and personal development. So the basic skills is really what the college or university is providing in terms of that college level math and writing minimums. And personal development, this can be from very robust to less robust, but it is about how the student is being prepared maybe for grad school or for jobs, or finding jobs, or for finding an internship, or for, behaving appropriately in an internship or a job, or whatever other aspects of the student's skills that the program feels they want to or need to work on. So this one, this personal development, has a lot of leeway in it, but I personally have seen just many great things that programs do for students in that way. So the couple of other elements to this are that we want to see, or at least see a discussion of how, if it's necessary, any of the results of the collection of data for student learning outcomes or operational effectiveness goals has been integrated into any budgeting items or into strategic planning. That is, the strategic planning element is more closely tied with those operational effectiveness goals. So we want to see that link between principle 1 and principle 2. And then we want to know, because the program at this point in the process has collected data for more than 1 year and would have had a chance to analyze data and to create and possibly put into action some of their plans, you want to see how they're closing that loop. So a lot of the evaluation, it's less focused on the creation, say, of a student learning outcome statement and the rubrics, and more on what they have done with the data and how they are self-evaluating and how they're doing in this principle. Is what they have in place working for them, or to what degree is it working for them? And then how do they take what they're learning from the data and putting that into action? So that's what you're really focusing on there. And, it's sort of partner principle here, strategic planning, this is of course, more robust evaluation of what the program wants to do for the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years or so. They are doing a deep dive into the kind of environment around which they exist, both on the campus, maybe regionally, maybe at the state level, or broader than that. So there are some required elements that you will look at. And then you are also you're reviewing what the program says how they align their strategic plan at that program level with any college or university or institutional level strategic plan. So sometimes a program might be in, say, a college of education or business, which also has a strategic plan. And then all of these should align, again, of course, with an institutional plan. Now, there are many times when, of course, we have new presidents or provosts or other top administrators who are in and out, changing, and they want to do something new. It would behoove the program, and we do require it, that they have their own strategic plan, even if it has to change when an institutional plan comes through. But that could be a stabilizing factor for them while they go through some of these administrative changes. So to not have a strategic plan at that program level is out of compliance with this principle, just straight up out of compliance. And it's having to wait for an institutional plan is not necessarily going to be a good excuse for not having a strategic plan. And hopefully they have one, because I've already read this document and have commented, hey, I don't see a strategic plan. You really need that. So in other words, you should be reviewing what they do have, and you can certainly talk to them about, well, if this big change is going to happen because you have a new president, then we recognize you will be changing this. So you evaluate it, but you kind of have to put it in context. Other questions asked in this principle relate to some succession planning questions. This is designed to alert the program to the fact that it is important to understand how you are going to manage change. So faculty come and go. Sometimes it's a surprise. How are you built? How are you set up to ensure that you can still perform the duties and functions, not only of this accreditation process, but all of the other responsibilities in a way that could make it through the loss of a faculty member or the shifting of some other thing. So we ask about that. And I will anecdotally, recently a program was writing in their self-study guideline responses to this that they ought to have thought about succession planning, because they had a faculty member that went on sabbatical and they were very overloaded while that person was on sabbatical, and they should have thought about in advance. So that's not necessarily a terrible thing that, they're going to get dinged on, but it definitely seemed for them to be a realization of how this process could help them, and that they definitely have a succession plan now in place so that they know what to do in these circumstances. You may also, if you're kind of a longtime COSMA person, you may recall that we had 8 different principles, one of which, number 8, was educational innovation. That one has now been incorporated into all the other principles. So within this principle, we have a question, a self-study guideline question about how the institution supports innovation for the program. So they will be responding to that, and you will see that threaded through several other principles so that you can evaluate their orientation toward innovation across principles. And then, as with many principles, the program is given an opportunity to reflect on the process of creating and implementing a strategic plan, and kind of how's that going, and what is not going well, what is going well, et cetera. So it's not necessarily, again, if they say, oh, it didn't go well and we did this wrong and that wrong, it doesn't mean they're out of compliance, but it is more about this self-reflection on the process. Like maybe they did something that did not go well, and so next time or soon they will be changing that to improve. It's also a chance for a conversation about how it's going and how they might, what assistance they might need in improving the process. All right, principle 3 has 5 different parts, and it is actually quite straightforward because, as you can see with these bullet points, it's a reporting of how the program is designed, and generally that is not only that it has a general education component and then major requirements and maybe some minor requirements or elective options, but also in what method might be used to transmit the classes and the information. So that's a straightforward response to the organization of the program. And then we go through the common professional component area. So this is an important part of the COSMA accreditation process, as it outlines all of the required areas for only the undergraduate degrees for the content of the sport management core. So the program has gone through an extensive evaluation of all of their classes, looking at the syllabi and kind of transposing the topics that they have in the syllabus to those common professional component areas, which of course they may be talking about multiple areas in the same focus in a class, in a same topic area in a syllabus. So you will be looking at the the degree to which they are talking about all of those common professional component areas. And there's generally not kind of a wrong way to do it. But again, you can go back to the mission of the program if they have some very strong areas, some maybe less strong areas, and you want to know, well, do they need to have more hours devoted to a specific area? Look back at their mission, see how the area might fit or not fit into that mission. And of course, you can talk with them while you're there to see if they feel like they do need to add, or maybe they don't realize, or they haven't done any sort of curriculum mapping. So they are over a little having too much content in one or more areas that's repetitive. So you can also talk to students about this, ask them how the flow feels for the classes and the options that they have to choose from in the core classes or maybe electives. You'll definitely get an honest answer from the students, and that can be really valuable information that the program may or may not have. You also are going to just ensure that the program has some formalized review of their curriculum, which could happen at various levels. Who's involved in it? How does curriculum get reviewed, and how does it get improved? And then, of course, if you are at an institution that has a master's degree and or a doctoral degree, then you would be looking at their responses to the latter sub-principles in this principle about their master's and doctoral curricula. And here are the CPC areas. All of them are required A through D. Letter E, which is innovations. And remember that I said that innovation was woven throughout the other principles. Well, this is an optional category if there are topics that don't seem to be covered by the rest of the CPC areas, or can be kind of simultaneously covered by the ones that we've outlined and something else. And the program is welcome to include it, just to show, there's other stuff going on. And you've got some examples of what might be included there. There are many different topics that can be covered in the sport management core, and not all of them should be required. But we do want to offer programs the chance to talk about the ones that they're doing that are maybe innovative or cutting edge. All right, Principle 4 is about faculty. It again, like Principle 3, has several subsections below it. One is about identifying the qualifications of the faculty. So this is, are they doctorally qualified, professionally qualified, or minimally qualified? It's a fairly straightforward, and there are descriptions and explanations about how everyone should be classified. And then the next subsection gets into the teaching load of the faculty, and that can be very complicated between full-time and part-time faculty. You're comparing the load that they have with the requirements set by the institution, or the limits set by the institution, and just ensuring that there are policies that exist and that they are following the policies. And if there are policies about breaking the policies, what is going on there, et cetera. This is a fairly common area that might be cited only in that there are circumstances where faculty are overloaded, or they are not technically overloaded, but they, of course, as we know, faculty have many other responsibilities. So how are those all in balance? So this is a bit of a mystery fact-finding mission to understand the degree to which the program feels that they have adequate time/resources to teach and do all of these other responsibilities. So you're there to support them in that, and understand where they are, and see if you might assist them. The latter two elements here, evaluation and the development of faculty and policies, those are quite straightforward in that they are reporting how the institution provides development for faculty, but also has policies in place, such as a handbook or something that is formalized such that faculty know what is expected of them and what the quote rules are. And then this area of coverage of CPC areas by full-time faculty, COSMA does not really say, oh, you have to have X number of faculty. But each of those CPC areas must be covered by a full-time faculty person. It certainly could be just one person. It's not always likely that that person would have the expertise to be in charge of covering all those CPC areas. So this is where there might be some leverage in terms of expanding the faculty or ensuring that there's expertise brought in for some of those CPC areas that one individual person might not be able to cover. All right.
Heather, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
I see your hand is raised. Yes, go ahead.
On that previous slide, covering the CPC areas, how do adjunct faculty play into that?
Well, they don't. It's only the full-time faculty.
Okay,
That said, there is, yeah, so in short, that's the answer. Certainly, I think there's room for adjunct faculty to cover these areas because it depends on the size of the program. And so that's where the sort of flexibility in interpreting these principles and looking at sort of the circumstances for each program means that we have to evaluate it according to what is happening there. So if there are one or two full-time faculty members, but one area just isn't quite covered, it seems reasonable to me that perhaps an adjunct would take that on or a part-time person would take that on. So
Okay.
that's a discussion to have, of course. So if you're the person being visited, know that it's not the end of the world. And if you're the site reviewer, then of course you're not doing this program. But it's then a conversation about the likelihood that say that adjunct or somebody similar with similar qualifications could be hired. Or, you have to look at it within the context of all the other elements. Does that
Thank you.
make sense? Okay. So, I'm giving you information. Some of it is, of course, contextual and will be determined within the context, not only of the institution, but of all of the other principles. So I give you as many answers as I possibly can, but again, it'll definitely be on a case-by-case basis. And there's never really one thing that topples a program down. I will say that, of course, outcomes assessment is incredibly important and is the cornerstone. So that one is probably the most critical, but some others, we will work with programs to do the best that they can within limitations to meet a principle. Okay, so moving on, principle 5 is about the scholarly and professional activities that the faculty, both full-time and part-time or adjunct, are partaking in, but it's all based on the requirements at that institution. So of course, if you are visiting an R1 institution, it's going to look a lot different from a small private teaching college. So depending on where you're coming from, you may be looking at the scholarly and professional activities of a very different institution with very different requirements, or it may be very similar to your own requirements. Regardless, the bar is of course set by the institution. And the lens that we're using with this accreditation process is of course sport management. So we want faculty to do whatever type of scholarship seems relevant to their requirements, but also within the scope of what is required, what options there are for sport management faculty, and same with all kinds of professional activities. Now, this field is very sport industry linked and very practitioner linked. So having activities that are directly related to sport industry is helpful for the program and the students and their practical experiences. So those are something that you might want to look for. And also participation collegially in conference attendance or in any sort of collaborations amongst sport management faculty. So you're not, you're not there to tell everybody to go to the COSMA conference, but what conferences that are sport management related are they going to? Or are they more focused on teaching a pedagogy? And so there are some more conferences that may not be sport management specific, but would help them get some new and innovative ideas in that area. So I think through these various bullet points that I have here, this is not a chance to, again, criticize the program, but certainly a chance to look for opportunities that are being missed and to, I guess, you're going to be evaluating this also in line with the faculty or the teaching load, which you was in principal for. So you're looking at the balance of all of these requirements that a faculty person has on their time and their effort. Okay, principle 6 is, I think, also linked back to principle 4, which is faculty, because you're looking at not only the physical facilities that the institution has, but the technology, the learning resources, so what's in the library or the media center, and other financial and support services. So it's linked back to principle 4 because if there are human resources that are lacking, this would be another area to include that information. So locations is generally that sort of geographic location of where campuses are located. And I mentioned that there generally aren't multiple campus locations, although there can be, but usually at this point we're talking about hybrid learning, online learning, that sort of thing. So you're looking at all of the areas that are covered, and that does play a role in teaching load and in responsibilities of faculty. There are some financial resources you're looking at. Mainly it is a look at the percentage of student credit hours generated by the program, and then the percentage of the overall budget of the institution that's allocated to the program. And you may want to see some kind of parity there. You're also on campus and you will be taking a tour, which is then, your sort of eyeballs on the offices, the classrooms, the computer labs, the facilities, whatever athletic center, library, etc. You're seeing where everything is and what it looks like. And so, for example, in some institutions, some classrooms have more access to technology than others. Sometimes that means some whole departments may have less access to technology than they want or need. Or some instances might be that the faculty offices are not located near their classrooms. So there can be a little bit of a disconnect in ensuring they can connect with students easily and readily. These are not necessarily things that COSMA can change, but we're looking at the total environment here, and sometimes there are plans in the works for making offices or classrooms improved so that it can improve the experience of both the students and the faculty. So you're looking at all of those things, and it's hard they can describe it, but it's much better to see in person. And you're maybe walking around in your site visit, going from office to office, talking to different people, or people may be coming to you, but you're getting a sense of how everything's working. How's the Wi-Fi? If you need to get a drink, is there water nearby? So you're just kind of getting a sense of the whole place while you're there, which is what making an in-person visit, it makes it very valuable. This is the last principle, hooray. But this has many very important components to it. So it's about the internal and external relationships that the sport management program has, on campus, and then of course in the wider community. So you're the questions in the self-study guidelines are asking what relationships the program has internally. So it might be that they have relationships with, let's say they are in education, but they talk to business and they have some collaboration with business, or they maybe a communications department, they have some sort of collaboration there, maybe with athletics to provide some job experience, internship, preliminary experience, etc. Another set of questions asked in one of the sub-principles is about admissions processes. So this is kind of an internal function, but it's to ensure that those individuals admitted both to the university as undergrads or in other levels have a reasonable chance to succeed. Mostly this is institutional policy and it's not really the purview of COSMA, but it's to ensure that those policies do exist and that they are being upheld. And then 7.3 is where the program will talk about the links that they have to sport industry. And they can talk about whatever sort of internship or experiential learning activities they have. It could be more than one thing or more than one sort of event in the student's life. So that is a really robust area where you may see a lot of interesting linkages depending on where the program's located and what kinds of relationships they have. So lots of cool things can be happening there. There may be other relationships they have with community colleges in the area, receiving transfer students, having some sort of collaboration even with high schools that teach, say, an intro to sport management class, but they're, maybe trying to recruit from high schools or have some sort of connection locally like that. Certainly, it could also mean that there are connections to universities in other countries that may also have international, student swaps or a chance for students to study abroad and get that real international sport global experience. So there's questions about that as well. In addition, there is a principle that asks about international sport management, and then one that asks about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll say on that one that if you are going to a program in a state where that has been outlawed, then it will be interpreted differently than it might be in a state where those words are not forbidden. So the point of this process and really of accreditation is to understand student success. So how programs approach ensuring that each student not only is admitted appropriately, but then is supported and has the proper resources throughout their degree program and career at that institution. That's what we're looking for. So what it's called and how it gets done is going to vary. And as a specialized accreditor, we are not in the business of having anyone break the law or get in trouble in that way. So we have ways to manage that, and that'll be site to site. So I can't really say anything more specific there. Anyway, the last element of this principle is it's about reporting to the public what those student achievement pieces of information are from the outcomes assessment plan. So for a program going through first-time accreditation, they actually cannot fulfill this principle. It's a statement of their accreditation status, and then it is the posting of their student learning outcomes matrix and their operational effectiveness goals matrix on the website. And so some programs and candidacy status do post those, but basically it is sort of a post, the program would be sort of out of compliance with that until they are accredited. So know that you can look on the website to see what's there in terms of this student achievement information, but know that a program going through first-time accreditation is not going to have all of the proper elements because they haven't been accredited yet. All right, so those are the 7 principles. That's really what you're doing on the site visit, is validating that self-study document with all those interviews. But it is not your job as a site reviewer to make any of the decisions, if you will, regarding accreditation. Maybe the site visit is going great and everything is wonderful. That doesn't mean you can say anything about whether that program is going to be accredited or reaffirmed in their accreditation. So that's the prerogative of the Board of Commissioners. I also do not have any say in that as well. All right, I did, of course, talk about these elements earlier on. There are a couple of additional ones here, but you may become BFFs with your teammate. You may not, but you definitely are working together, talking to them. You have had your call with me where we really deep dive into the self-study, and then I strongly encourage teams to keep that channel of conversation going before the site visit. I'm there, of course, to support everybody. There's actually today, there's a site visit happening, and so I'm like on call just in case anything is happening with the team. If you, when the site visit is being planned, you certainly can weigh in on your preferred methods of travel, times of travel, where you want to stay in a hotel, etc. We're not talking about 4-star accommodations, unfortunately, or first class. We're talking about regular travel and, inexpensive travel. But nonetheless, if you need any accommodations or assistance in any way that might be different, then just let me know or let the campus coordinator know, and we'll make sure that you're accommodated. There is a wonderful site visit reviewer guide within our site visit preparation manual. It's maybe 10 or 12 pages, but it gives some great seed questions to give you ideas about how to approach the question segments of your interviews. So you can look at those. And when I do talk to the teams, and I'm also, of course, mentioning this now, there are many different ways to word questions or how to ask questions. And I want you to do it in the most kind of open-ended, diplomatic way as possible. So recently somebody's asked me, well, I want to know if this institution, what their orientation is toward AI and if they are using AI. And I said, well, you certainly can ask about that. It's not a explicit requirement. We certainly talk about innovation. So ask it in a way that is, can you tell me about this? If there is any policy or what conversations you've had on campus around AI and how it's used or not used or what the limitations are. So if you can see from how I'm approaching it, it's understanding what is it that they do and how they do it, in what contexts is something happening. You're not saying you should use AI, how, so tell me how that's going. Maybe they should use AI, but that's not, there's definitely different ways to ask it so that it's more open-ended. We do have also a short code of conduct that outlines sort of a little bit about behavior and a little bit about just dressing professionally and behaving professionally when you're on site. You are representing COSMA, and we want all of the site visits to be useful and helpful and lacking in, let's say, conflict. But so that is some of the discussion that I have with each team. And it's also outlined in this code of conduct, but just to ensure that everybody knows what the expectations are. And I've talked about this a little bit, that you should evaluate this program based on their own mission, and that you might see things that are similar to your own program or different, or your own institution. So yes, of course, we all use our own experiences to understand what we're seeing in front of us or what we're hearing. You can do that, of course, but know, where that line is between, well, we do it this way and it's the only / best way. That's not the approach. The approach would be more like, can you describe why it's done this way? What how effective it is? What other options might there be? Or are you open to other ways of doing things? So you're balancing a little bit of comparison of what you're familiar with, what you know, to what you're seeing in front of you and what they do and how they do it within their own context. And last, this exit interview does encompass many of these other things I've been talking about. It is a chance to be transparent with the program, which you will be doing the whole time. It's a chance to, outline things that they could improve upon, which it's good for them to hear that before they see it in writing, but also to praise them. And I think starting with that is always positive. There, of course, are going to be great things that they're doing, that they have done, that they plan to do. So please let them know, you saw it, you heard it, and you are reflecting it back to them so that they can feel good about it. All right, the report. So I mentioned that there is a template. I mentioned what the sections are, but I'll kind of go through it again. There is an area to write up kind of a couple of paragraphs that summarize what's going on in that particular principle. And that is the first section. There are 4 of the principles have subsections. So it's more structured than it's more structured in those principles. So you will be writing a little bit of a summary for each of the subsections. So that kind of is helpful, I think. It's not so open-ended that you're like, well, what should I talk about here? I'm not sure. It's fairly clear. You are talking about the strengths of the program. There's a bullet points that you would write that, and if you want to commend the program, like something is just truly incredible, you can use that language, and that can really be outstanding for that program. And then another section is called the areas of need. So this is a more general outline of what is maybe lacking in that particular principle. And then from there, the translation of those areas of need turn into something we call action items. And those action items are items that the program is going to have to respond to, they're required to, and it is an area that is not compliant with the principles. So the areas of need are sort of a description of it, and then what they could do to show compliance would be how the action item is written. And then in another category are recommendations. These are items they could respond to, but are not required to, and they are kind of like icing on the cake, things that could really be great and kind of help with that continuous improvement, raise the bar a little bit, but aren't required. It's not about compliance. So I am kind of the unifying factor with these reports in that, we will write those action items similar across programs, and you as a site reviewer really can't know how it's written in the past. So that is where I will lend some of my assistance. So if there are some similar issues that arise, and the way that we approach wording it, that's sort of how I'm going to assist you in the final version of the report. Also, what's very important for COSMA is that the report is, free of sort of typos. I do expect coherent and well-formed sentences this is a report that's going not only to the faculty in the program, but also to those top administrators. So it needs to look good and have no mistakes. But if I am confused or have any questions about anything written, I always go back to the team. So it is you have a document, you've submitted it to me, but I may be in touch with you if I have any questions about any areas. I don't want to misinterpret. I don't want to add something that wasn't there. I wasn't there. So I want to that's where we would talk together about how to keep the report consistent, but with what really happened at that institution. All right, so some other sort of logistics about completing your site visit after you are home. You will be given an expense report template. And on that template, you would include the honorarium that you would receive. So for the site team chair, it's $600. It's $300 a day for that person. And for the team member who has fewer responsibilities, it is $200 a day or $400. So you put that into the expense report, and then any items that you had to pay for on your own. It might be meals, it might be parking at your home airport or some mileage to and from the airport. Those are the things that you would include on that expense report. So it's generally not a lot. Obviously, the honorarium is the largest portion. There are two ways that a program can pay for a site visit. They can either make the travel and hotel arrangements themselves and work with you, of course, on that, or they can pay COSMA a flat fee, and I do that. So those are, so depending on who's organizing it, you get reimbursed the same and within, I hope, a very timely manner in the same way, but there's just a little bit of a difference on the back end of how that's completed. Obviously, you write the report after the site visit, and then you also have a chance to evaluate your teammate. And this is, I don't think I've had many teammates that have not gotten along. I mean, it could happen. But generally everyone gets along and does a good job together. But if there's any kind of criticism or compliment, I'd love to hear it. So please do fill out that evaluation. You can also, of course, tell me about how the process in general went, because I use all of that information for every site visit to improve not only this training, but any sort of preliminary work I do with the team, or just in general when we are revising documents. We would include that kind of feedback to streamline the process, to make it more clear, et cetera. You are then absolved of your responsibility once that site visit report has been, completed and finalized. You will no longer have access to I generally keep a drive where all of the documents are located, and you will be removed from that, and you should destroy any documents that you have. And most importantly, you are maintaining confidentiality of the information that you read in the self-study from anyone else. So that, because some of it is very sensitive, and also it is, we want everyone to feel comfortable being very critical of their programs and what they are doing well and not well. And, that's not something to take advantage of in a negative way. So some of the tips and tricks that I share with site reviewers, not only when I just meet with them before a visit, but here, of course, as well, is dividing and conquering. This can really be helpful if you're the team member to do something. Either if it's your first time, you may want to just stick with the familiar or the comfortable, but watch and observe the other team member. But also if you're, say, some sort of outcomes assessment guru, you should really tackle principle one and be the one to evaluate that. So divide those principles. You can divide the responsibilities of writing the report. The team chair is going to be responsible for the report, so they will be reviewing your sections. So it's not that it's just written without any communication. But there should be several eyes on all of the materials. Whatever type of, you can start basically writing the report from your initial review of the self-study by taking notes in the template of the report, if that's what is going to be the best way for you to do that. I just recommend you being as efficient as you can, but everybody has their own methods. Please do not have typos and spelling errors, beyond what's maybe reasonable. So please make it look good because, it's going to be going to somebody in a powerful position in the institution, and I want COSMA to look good. I'm also there to help with that. As I mentioned before, we have a sample report that could assist you. And so it's not to cut and paste from, but to say, oh, this is how they talked about this. Oh, this is how they talked about that. That kind of thing. And you, of course, will have to contextualize it to the program that you're looking at. This is a thorough, retentive, detail-oriented type of process. So yes, you're getting into the weeds. You're also providing the big picture. You're linking, making connections between the principles, as I talked about a little bit in terms of like innovation, or, you know, how outcomes assessment is woven through, or how resources, both human and otherwise, are how that's managed at the institution. So we're hoping that the reports are always helpful, that you're, you know, if you're going to make recommendations, which I said are not required to respond to, that they are useful and helpful recommendations, not just some pet thing that you think every program should have or not have. So this is supposed to be useful and helpful. This is the end of the presentation, but I will say that you may be overwhelmed drinking from the giant fire hose the first time you do this. It can be overwhelming, and I'll do my best to help. The team chair will do the best to help you. They're definitely there to help you gain some perspective and maybe just bite off the amount that you can chew there. And, you know, take notes and use whatever method of preparation you need. I always write questions that I'm going to ask in advance, and it's okay to look at your laptop or a piece of paper when you're interviewing somebody in order to see what you're going to ask next. That's not a crime. So, you know, do what you need to do. All right, are there any questions that I can take or comments at this time? If not, I will just shut off the recording.
I don't think so. It's all pretty straightforward, and we've been through the site visit before here at SUNY Canton. I've done a site visit